Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the Big Red podcast, where we dive into the exciting world of optimism. 2022 was a pretty foundational year for optimism. It was obviously introducing Optimism Collective in the Token House, shipping the attestation station. The ecosystem has certainly been growing at an astonishing pace, and the numbers don't lie. The City of Optimism, I think, went from about 300 mil TVL up to over 1.1 billion. So definitely more people using Optimism, more dApps leveraging the security of Ethereum every day. And looking ahead to 2023, it's set to be even more explosive with the release of Optimism Bedrock, a modular performant Ethereum equivalent codebase, also known as the OP stack. And while making key contributions to Ethereum's rollup centric roadmap. So we're starting to see a plethora of brilliant protocols awakening to the potential of optimism. Industry heavyweights like Aave and OpenSea moved over in 2022, as well as we experienced some new homegrown originals from Sonnet Finance and also Velodrome. And these builders, some of which are with us today, are going to be creating the future DeFi Lego pieces, allowing previously unimaginable strategies at the hands of Optimism's users. So we're really excited to share our insights and perspectives on the latest developments on Optimism, the trends and projects. And yeah, I'd invite you to sit back, relax, and join us as we cover the Big Red. As it's our first broadcast, it seemed only natural to let you know why we are doing this. The Big Red is going to be airing every 2 weeks with the purpose of bringing together the Optimism community to cover the stories and updates that matter the most. We're uniting the local builders, the passionate delegates, and everyday users on the shared quest of making the most of these opportunities on Optimism. So what that means is we're wanting to ask a lot of questions, we're wanting to learn solid fundamentals, and hopefully catch some good project alpha along the way. We're all passionate about blockchain technology here, offering new opportunities to people everywhere, and believe that Optimism opens new doors to users who previously were disenfranchised from Ethereum or wanting a smoother or cheaper Ethereum experience. So for these first formative episodes, I'd ask you all to have patience for the new listeners who may have never heard of Optimism before, as we look forward to building the knowledge over the course of this season with you all. So with that introduction out of the way, I'd like to I'd like to share the airtime with my colleagues. So if I could pass it over to Benji to maybe give us an introduction of yourself and how you discovered Optimism and what got you involved.
What's up? Thank you guys for having me. So I'm Benji. Follow me on Twitter. I started working at OP Labs around March last year, and currently work at OP Labs, but I'm here representing myself. So essentially how I discovered Optimism was actually I read an article on retroactive public goods funding, and it was a Medium article co-written by Vitalik and the Optimism team. And instantly, I think it was one of the most goosebump inducing articles I've ever read in my life. And literally from there, I was like, okay, I was at Coinbase at the time as an APM. I was like, okay, this feels right. Like this, I'm like trying to think of all these different use cases of like blockchain technology, of decentralized coordination, of like what is actually going on in this space, right? Like, why are we here? And that was where like the light bulb went off. And from there, reached out to a few people, ended up applying, and now I've been working at OP Labs. But yeah, I guess like the main catalyst for me was what we're doing within the realm of retroactive funding and what that means for the world. So.
Beast. You're muted, Samson.
Sorry, thanks. My keyboard's loud when I type. Yeah, that's such a nice introduction, Benji. Thank you. It's such a good mission that I think Optimism puts out. I'll hand it over to Alex now. Do you want to maybe give us an introduction on yourself, sir?
Yeah, you bet. Hello, I'm Alex. I am one of the co-founders of Velodrome. And if you don't already know, Velodrome is the sort of main exchange and liquidity hub of the Optimism ecosystem. Yeah, I guess like how I found my way to Optimism is that I was originally part of a DAO that was very involved in the launch of Solidly, which was kind of Andre Cronet's last big hurrah in DeFi. And I also think maybe marked the beginning of the bear market, right? Was the explosive launch on Phantom. Many of the folks on this call, were very closely involved in all of that, but we essentially watched, what was a brilliantly designed protocol launched in maybe both not the best environment, but also launched with, I guess, a lot of sort of core issues that needed to be fixed. And once it became clear that, some of those issues with the original solidly DEX were more or less fatal, we as a DAO started to think about, well, what can we do? I think everybody had sort of given up on the model. They thought maybe it was fatally flawed in the sense of just there was something fundamentally broken. We thought, hey, we can actually take this thing, and if there is a place that is basically really aligned around the concept of, a public good, AMM, say a place that right now whose growth is currently limited by a lack of deep on-chain liquidity, that might be sort of a perfect place to sort of take that revolutionary model that Andre gave us, make some sort of core fixes, refinements to the underlying economic model, obviously to the code. And that's when we started to get into discussions with Optimism. And now it seems very, very easy, but even in that moment, I think we got a fair amount of crap, but I think we were starting to see the Alt L1 thesis fail, right? And so when we were looking, and we had lots of folks reach out to us about where we would sort of take this thing, we said basically it's got to be an ETH layer 2, because we think even if there's a bear market, that's going to be where a lot of the activity is going to generate. It's got to be a place that's sort of hungry for that liquidity. It's got to be an ecosystem and culture built around public goods, because we did want to build it as a public good. And so that's how we found our way to Optimism. And, we partnered with that team very closely. They gave us a $150K bootstrapping grant to launch Velodrome, which maybe if you're not in crypto, that sounds like a lot of money. But if anybody's ever tried to bootstrap a protocol, that maybe gives you an hour of a good dev's time. So, we were really, really shoestring, but we were embraced by the Optimism Foundation. We were embraced by the Optimism community. And now, of course, we've got the leading DEX on the network. And it's difficult to even imagine what the world would look like had we gone anywhere else. It's such a great place to be.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. And, speaking of other leading projects, we've got Atakan from Sone Finance as well. If you want to maybe give us an introduction to your platform too, and why you got to Optimism.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Atakan. I'm the team lead of Sone Finance. Sone Finance is the only native lending protocol on Optimism. And I don't have an exciting story as Benji. I found my way into Optimism with, to be honest, Velodrome, because I was a big fan of Solidly design, and I know the protocol by heart. I did the first video of Solidly, and I looked to Velodrome and loved the way it designed. So tried it, loved it, and loved the Optimism chain. And we were brainstorming for a long time that how to launch a protocol on Solidly model. So we did it with our flywheel. I'm sure Alex or maybe many of you are know that. So yeah, that's how we got here. And we love the chain, we love the community, and yeah.
I'm hearing a lot of these underlying themes. Obviously the public good has come through a couple of times, and also how Velodrome has been a significant sort of attention grabber for people. Beavis, what's your story like? Is it, was Velodrome your hook into Optimism, or how did you discover it?
Well, a lot of our peers over on the Phantom network, and we didn't know Velodrome was in that bunch until we actually met with them and realized that they had been building on Phantom previously. But a lot of our peers started going over there, And at the time, we were kind of looking for a new home base, so to speak. Kind of similar to Alex's point of view. It's like the alt L1 thesis was weakening along with the market, and it became clear that security wouldn't scale. I remember there was a time post Luna where a lot of the alt L1s like weren't even adequately paying for their security. Taking over 51% of the nodes would have been less expensive than just anything else. So very, very weird time to be in, and the value proposition of layer 2 networks was really exciting. And we actually kind of followed the Beethoven X team. So Beethoven X, they're a talented group of individuals who work with Balancer Labs. We have a lot of synergies as a yield aggregator operator, and we followed them there. And, since then have been building boosted pools with them, have built a strong relationship with Velodrome, IMO. Maybe Alex could speak to that better than me. Now we have some really cool products built on top of Velodrome, built underneath Beethoven. And really, we're just trying to become an integral part of the infrastructure. And I think another big thing, which kind of led to the name of this podcast as well, is I thought they were kind of swaggy. I liked the big red circle, and I'm like a bold guy, and I make bold statements, and I'm just all about the ethos and where they're going. So really, just something I could feel happy about falling in line with and building a business on.
Nice. And I think Beavis kind of jumped over it, but the yield aggregator he's talking about is Reaper.farm. Both Beavis and I are Byte Masons, and we contribute to Reaper Farm and a bunch of other protocols that are building on Velodrome, just so everyone knows who I am too. But I agree with the swaggy comment. I mean, for me, the image that comes to mind when I think of Velodrome is like all the hippies with the big ball in the sky, that really stuck with me. Is like, oh, okay. It's sort of like everyone is going through this experience of discovery right now, and purpose. It's sort of like a new tier of appreciation for the collective blockchain experience that we're trying to build. Yeah. So look, I mean, I heard a bunch of comments there about Ethereum being more secure, and this was one of my later questions, but I'd like to bring it up because there's already been a couple mentions. Like, why is it significant to be close to Ethereum? Like, why is the layer 2 significant?
Yeah, I mean, I'll lead off on this one briefly. I think really, when you think about a truly decentralized network, and you can noodle into all of Ethereum's flaws, there are mentions of, pre-mines, involvement with the SEC, et cetera, leading into their launch. You can take all those, take every flaw Ethereum has and look at it and see a network that is orders of magnitude more decentralized, more secure, more robust than any other. And I think right now, it's pretty clear that Ethereum is unstoppable. It's pretty clear that, everybody has buy-in. Even the all L1 founders are bought into Ethereum, and you look at the app chain thesis, you look at the modular blockchain thesis, all of these kind of competing narratives involve around, hey, Ethereum can have 60 to 80% of the market. Look at all these cool niches. And I think one of the cool niches is taking that 60 to 80% of the market and then also suiting the niches on top of that. And that's what I see L2s being, and borrowing from Securium or Ethereum security. Shout out Securium, good company. But borrowing from Ethereum security, I think, makes a lot of sense. Submitting proofs to the Ethereum network makes a lot of sense, and we're not totally 100% there yet in L2s, but I think May of 2022 was a big reality check. We were like, damn, a lot of these alt L1s are kind of built on paper mache and twigs, and everybody was looking at Ethereum as like, oh, it only went down 40% instead of 95% or whatever. And I think a lot of teams like immediately put, okay, we need to get on Ethereum while gas is cheap and while the bear market is unfolding ASAP. And L2s, in my opinion, are the absolute best way to do that, especially for a team that isn't like super well funded. So yeah, that's my comment. I'm sure Benji and Alex and Anakin have good stuff to say though.
Yeah, so on my end, I think like there's this saying that I like to use, which is like community isn't everything, it's the only thing. Like nothing in this industry matters without a proper community that's like grassroots and believes in what you're doing and wants to support you and wants to be a part of this. That's where the swag comes in, right? Like you want your community to feel good, like how it looks. That's where ownership comes in. You want the community to feel like they have a voice. That's where the decentralized governance comes in. The community which layer 2s inherit are by proxy in most cases through the layer 1 in which they're sat on top of, right? Yeah. The Ethereum layer 1, like Ethereum community, is the largest community in crypto. It has the most builders in crypto. It has the longest withstanding protocols in the industry, right? Like essentially like within the smart contract space, like Ethereum is where activity and developers are. And basically by being able to take that community and like also introduce it to layer 2s where they get the hosted benefits that layer 2s provide while still maintaining that alignment, I think is key to building a very robust network. And this is actually a design decision for Optimism, where the Optimism initially launched as the OVM, right? The optimistic virtual machine, but transitioned into being actually more focused on being EVM equivalent. So what we're seeing is not just like, we're not just taking Ethereum's like community and folks like to also build on L2s, but we're also taking the like tech as well, essentially. So the minimal difference between Optimism and Ethereum, that difference gets smaller and smaller. So if you're developing on Ethereum, like switching to Optimism is basically, almost like as simple as switching a chain ID. We're trying to create that moat and that bridge to be as simple as possible for people to deploy. So the equivalence matters a lot, and we are fully EVM equivalent.
Nice. Anything to add, Alex or Anakin?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, I think what we're seeing play out too is that we're going to see some of the major L2s basically combine what was best about many of the alt L1s, right? And these sort of aggressive programs to build communities of builders, to incentivize users, right? To bring all of that activity. That's a great playbook. Everybody was able to watch alt L1s, sort of have this amazing ability to attract. But I think for all the reasons that we're talking about, in Ethereum security and its reliability, in the fact that, it's rolled through all of these punches relatively unscathed, it makes me feel differently about those programs, that those programs are going to build a sort of lasting foundation, and that this is truly where, that next generation of apps that brings, mainstream adoption, mainstream use cases, brings all of that, just one step closer. I think it's going to be on Ethereum L2s, because after, the past year we've had, how on earth would you trust yourself, trust your money, trust your product, trust anything to whatever the latest hot alternative model is, right? I really think this is going to be the place where a lot of the activity concentrates. And I think Optimism and others are showing there's a great sort of playbook to be run to sort of build and attract that activity.
Yeah, great answer. Go ahead, Anakin, if you had anything else.
Yeah, like the other source, like also described the technical parts, but like besides Bitcoin, Ethereum is the only real decentralized chain, and being the oldest, most battle-tested smart contract platform gives that security feeling to people. Like, I don't know how to describe it perfectly, but even when I see the logo of Ethereum, it feels like I'm in good hands. Like every innovation starts on Ethereum, almost every protocol or fork has its roots on Ethereum. And like if there is one single serious mass adoption candidate, the candidate is like always Ethereum. But like I think you'll agree that generally public doesn't care about decentralization or transparency or like ethos of Ethereum. Like yes, builders or believers of decentralization might know that the most secure place is Ethereum and the best option we have is to scale Ethereum instead of like building tons of different L1s. But like when a person try to pass a transaction for like $5, Ethereum already has like lost a consumer. It's a like in my opinion, it's a great base layer, but not a great chain for like everyday transactions. And I think this is where Optimism and other L2s shine on this matter. Like if people are informed correctly, I think they will know that they are doing relatively well, cheap transactions while still having the security of Ethereum with Optimism.
Nice.
Yeah.
So to recap, it's basically Ethereum is just such a powerhouse of a network that it's very hard to corrupt it. There's just so much activity and focus that users can basically trust that it's almost impossible to stop this beast from continuously processing. So as opposed to some of the other networks which are incentivizing heavily, like you said, Alex, to attract new liquidity and help secure it, the idea of Optimism is it allows everyone to access the security of Ethereum, but you also get the better user experience and affordability, like you were mentioning, Atakan, of alternative layer ones. But that's such a powerful bull case. Was there any other points to add to this? Maybe to you, Beavis, like what's your L2 bull case beyond what's already been discussed?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Ethereum, like, you're looking at rock hard infrastructure, and block space for Ethereum over the multiple years long time frame, et cetera, is just going to get higher and higher in demand. And while they have a lot of scaling solutions in their roadmap, I think right now, until sharding, dank sharding, et cetera, is live, we're going to see, especially in the event of another kind of positive market cycle, L2s being as hotly competed for as Ethereum. Because the thing is, like, Optimism has built the OP stack, a beautifully forkable L2 infrastructure stack. And we're going to see companies continue to adopt it and adopt it and adopt it, as we already have. And pretty soon, all of these like transaction compressors are going to dominate Ethereum block space. And as Ethereum scales and as people build on top of Ethereum, and as you have like, JP Morgan's Optimism chain, as you have Bank of America's OP stack chain, it's like those are really, really, really high value transactions to secure these entire ecosystems or to secure these entire businesses on top of the chain, that we're going to see Ethereum as a business to consumer operation, which has been less and less of in the past couple of years, become almost an impossibility. And we're going to see where Ethereum was in 2021, a lot of these premier L2s are going to be more like that, where it's, now their block space is hotly contested and Ethereum is almost exclusively for scaling businesses. And then eventually we'll see more and more stuff like that. And, Optimism and the OP stack fit so neatly into like every blockchain thesis, the low cost, like people are going to go to wherever costs are low. Okay, Optimism is there. The app chain thesis, apps are going to start building on purpose-built chains. Okay, Optimism is there. An institutional type thesis where institutions are going to want private chains. Okay, spin up your own L2, easy as. And that to me, it makes building on L2s really a no-brainer, because I mean, I clip coupons, bro. It's like, I'm not about to spend $30,000 deploying on Ethereum, and sure, I'd love to eventually. I would love to be at a point where that's just a non-expense. But, as someone trying to build a business, we don't have VCs throwing money at us. It's, layer twos are just a no-brainer, and app developers are going to see that more and more and more and more and more. And as the OP stack gets easier and easier to spin up and deploy and manage, all of your favorite games are going to have their own L2, and it's just like you get to borrow the security of Ethereum at a tiny fraction of the cost. You just logically, it makes sense. It's the path of least resistance, and it exists now, and it's going to get easier and easier and easier and easier to scale. So that to me is like L2s are a no-brainer. Build your position now, and make your claim. It's like divvying up the moon or whatever.
Not financial advice, of course.
Yeah. I mean, position is in like just getting on there and making yourself
learning even.
A member of the community.
Actually, one thing to build on that, I would say, maybe a handful of times every week we get asked, hey, is Velodrome going multi-chain? When are you guys going to go to Arby? Will you go to mainnet? Especially with so many of our great partners, right, are multi-chain, and they enjoy the experience we're providing enough that they're like, hey, it would be nice if, we could have the same sort of experience elsewhere, which is very kind. But I think what we keep telling them is like, we see so much potential with all the things that you're describing, Justin, like on Optimism, right? On OP Stack, like more than enough, right? To keep us exceptionally busy, to create extraordinary growth. And like, I think that's something people don't fully appreciate, is just how big I think Optimism is going to be. And if you do really, like you said, position yourself in this ecosystem, if you support the ecosystem, if you help grow it, I think there's just extraordinary potential in a way that, trying to be a little bit of everything to everyone everywhere is just, it's going to be a little different. I think we're putting our bet pretty hard on Optimism and the team for all the reasons you just mentioned.
Nice.
One thing to add as well on that lens, like there are these differentiators, right, that Optimism has. L2s in general is how Ethereum has chosen to scale. That's a given. The roadmap of Ethereum is L2 centric. But now it's the question of like, okay, which L2? Like, why this one over that one, right? The OP stack's one thing that's a differentiator. The other thing is the fact that Optimism's entire ethos is retroactively rewarding the creation of public goods. Now, what that means basically is we will literally, like, the network rewards folks who build infrastructure that generally does not pay. Like, no one's going to go and raise money to build some sort of tool that's very specific and open source and niche, right? But if you incentivize that, and if you incentivize the retroactive funding of those tools to be created, then if you almost imagine like a city, right? Like if in the city, everyone's kind of creating their own mini park, or everyone's picking up the trash and doing these like very humanitarian things that don't really pay, right? But they do get paid in the Optimism city, essentially. Then you have a beautiful city where as a builder, as a user, you get these like things that you may not think about while using the network, but you're like, it really enables for the success of the network itself. The internet itself was built off of open source public goods. We've moved away from that. It's become very privatized. But if you look at the core essence in the back end that lets the internet, like lets us do this stream itself, it was built on the backs of people who went and created open source public infrastructure. And if we enable that on a blockchain network, such as Optimism, it's just going to get a lot easier for anyone to develop or use. And that's another like large differentiator that I think is really, really interesting to just like noodle in on.
Yeah. That's what gets me fired up about blockchains, is the ability for even anyone to be rewarded at any point, almost arbitrarily. It's such an amazing superpower. You don't have to get anyone's bank details or wait for any of that even. I just love that it opens new ways of incentivizing discovery and technology. If you're listening to this and you're an Ethereum user and you were trying to make a swap yesterday on 1inch and the Blur airdrop happened, and now you're spending $80 to swap, what are you doing? If you can't hear these builders telling you that this is such an exciting and invigorating space to be in, that everyone's wanting to build here, you should be coming and trying Optimism and seeing the difference, because you'll probably be quite impressed. So I really like that you brought up the retroactive public funding. I'd like to hop down to that. I think this is such an enormous topic that I'd like to spend just a bit of time on understanding and kind of introducing to everyone. How does Optimism manage a system of such scale? And, you know, obviously it'd be beautiful if everyone in my city was picking up the trash and you know, taking care of, you know, everyone else's animals and everything else. But it's hard to incentivize. You know, I'd almost say that most people assume that people are kind of almost bad, you know, by default. So how is Optimism, you know, building this culture and swag and incentivizing people, and how is this manageable for a team, and what systems have been put in place, Benji? And maybe we can dig into the public good funding as part of that.
Yeah. Sam, I think like people aren't inherently bad. It's just that there's not enough incentive to be good, right? Like I think like, and you can really like go all meta and be like, it's all incentive structures, and maybe it is, right? I prescribe to that. I think like with the right incentives provided to do good, to reward the creation of things that otherwise you'd have to be a financial martyr. Like for example, like if you're creating an open source public good, in many cases you're a financial martyr, right? You're like, I'm not going to make money off of this. I'm just going to do it. If you can incentivize those people to not be financial martyrs, you can incentivize more people to do that, and more people to create those like parks and, you know, pick up the trash and make the city beautiful. The way in which Optimism does that is essentially, so specific example, there's currently a 10 million OP round of retroactive public goods funding that is ongoing, where there was a 3-week period in which people could go and nominate projects, right? So anyone who's created public goods for 3 weeks, you can go nominate them, make the case. From that nomination, it goes into the governance system of Optimism, which is a decentralized governance system that has a citizens house and a token house. So this is the invention essentially, is like, it's not just token based voting, right? Like there's actually a elected citizens house that is able to create like this almost bicameral system of two the House and the Senate essentially, or like two different sectors. And it is a novel experiment essentially within governance in crypto. Usually it's token based. And that is where the decisions get made essentially on how the retroactive funding occurs. So it's a really, really exciting initiative, and yeah, happy to noodle in and like dive in a bit more on any specific question. But yeah, it's done through decentralized governance. It's all incentive structures, and yeah, we can actually incentivize people to.
Optimism's governance is better governance than in my country, sir.
I was going to say it's such a large scale, the Optimism. It's really impressive. I think it really shows a lot of care, and you know, I loved how you kind of you didn't use the word flywheel, but I think you could use the word a positive feedback flywheel for, you know, humanity to be incentivized to do good things. And I think that's a really beautiful message. So thanks, Benji, for contributing to that. And I guess I would like to dig in a bit more to, I guess, how much of the system was pre-planned versus how much of this are you reacting to? You know, like how much, was it always going to be a citizen's house and a token house, or did you start with one and then realize you needed the Senate as well?
We launched with bicameral governance in mind. Yeah,
such a cool experiment.
Yeah, and I will say that, like, if you know, because we've been here basically, you know, since the token launched and since this sort of governance experiment began. And I think if you watch closely what Optimism is doing, they are trying to rapidly innovate and refine the system. And I think, you know, Bobby and some of the other folks from the Optimism team that are deep in the weeds of this, you know, deserve a lot of praise, because I mean, it was very messy initially, right? You know, I think pretty much everybody on this call, you know, has had both amazing and some pretty rocky experiences when interfacing directly with Optimism governance, but they framed it as, you know, a radical sort of like social experiment, and I think it is that. And I've actually been amazed by how quickly, they've gone through these voting cycles, like on grant applications. And after each sort of season, right, they've sort of clearly gone away somewhere, did a lot of thinking about what worked, what didn't work, and then they've come back with sort of a new model meant to refine it. And I think every time we've seen them sort of like come back with something slightly new, we just kind of go, huh, yeah, they kind of fucking nailed it, right? Like if we were to give them like a 10-point, thing about how the parts of this process that were very hard could have been improved, like that, we might have come back with something that looks like that. And I think that's the kind of thing that makes you want to work through the kinks, right? And be part of governance, be part of this experiment to help make it better. Because if you believe in the vision of decentralized networks, if you believe, that something like this is possible, I just don't think there's anybody trying it as rigorously right now as the Optimism team. And again, that adds to the sort of excitement of just being on this network and being in this space.
You just
Nice.
teleported, Etienne.
That was cool. Yeah, so I guess I'd like to bring up how all of this is actually taking place. So there's a form, there's like an immutable form on the internet, and then there's also a snapshot or like a gauge vote, and that's how it was previously running. But now it's transitioned to the Agora, or like a completely on-chain decentralized governance system or governance portal. How do you see this evolving more in the future? And what kind of impact might this have on the governance decisions being made today? I guess maybe I'll start with you, Bebis. I'll throw you in the deep end. What do you think about on-chain governance via the Agora?
Yeah, I think on-chain governance is something that requires a lot of backtesting. It's something we've seen fail quite a few times. I think kind of the biggest one that comes to mind is, Compound created Governor Alpha, and they put all this work into creating on-chain governance, and then they just reverted back to Snapshot after things get complicated, bugs were found, et cetera. And another thing is, the blockchain is immutable, and no matter how upgradable you make your system, there's always going to be state, there's always going to be remnants left behind. So, I haven't engaged with Agora quite yet. I probably should here in the next week, so I sound smarter the next episode. But, I think it's kind of a testament to how aggressively they've been learning from the things they've been doing, the things they haven't been doing, and from the community to reach this point. Because on-chain governance is bold and it's very hard. So yeah, I honestly didn't even know they had moved to on-chain governance. So that was a good question to kick me off to.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Gotcha. That rarely happens. I
really
rarely
cool.
catch him. Somehow he keeps up with everything. Yeah. Anything else to add from anyone else on the governance portal? Because otherwise, what I'm hearing is not only is Optimism sort of cheaper to interact with, you still get the security, but you can also actually participate in an enormous system and have a voice. And I think that's quite a spectacular feature of Optimism. So it's nice to spend some time highlighting really the opportunity that's available to people to actually participate. So
vote.optimism.io. Vote.optimism.io. Good ass website.
Also, I
ahead,
think
Etienne.
at first we won't see that much of a difference, as like there will be a time needed for it to be accepted by community. And like in my honest opinion, like also it won't have like that much impact on governance decisions at first, as the biggest holders are like already aware of the current governance systems and they will adopt, but like retail will have a little bit more time to adapt to new system. But like I think general public doesn't care about voting or making like their voice heard, but they care about if there's a democratic process behind it. Like they care about the vision of the governance system, but like they don't vote generally. So it's very important, and it's very important for us, and it's very important for the like branding of Optimism. But like at first, I think we won't like it won't make that much impact on like decisions.
Such a good point. And just to make everyone aware as well, if you aren't someone that has the time to dig into the democratic process of Optimism, you can actually delegate your position to someone that believes in the same things that you do. So there's a delegate program which we'll cover more in detail in future episodes as we get some delegates on the show too. So I look forward to that. Let's change the lens now. Let's look at trends and developments. So I guess I want to understand, every protocol, every layer 2, if you were looking at the options of layer 2s, there's sometimes a protocol which defines that network. Now, I think all of us would probably say that Velodrome for Optimism is quite a key protocol and is a mainstay. But I want to understand, what else is out there that could define Optimism in a different way. Maybe Benji, I know you're the most connected one in the room in terms of builders. Maybe I could throw you off first, and maybe you could give us a couple names. What's exciting you in the space?
So, honestly, there's so much. So let's see. I think there's like excitement all around with what layer 2s enable, both on the infra side, so like wallets, etc. On new verticals, gaming, etc. DeFi, of course. I think Alex and Atakan would probably have more expertise within the DeFi landscape at Optimism, so I'm going to focus on the other two. Wallets are fascinating. So, everyone's talking about like account abstraction and usability and UX, etc. Optimism actually has a bunch of AA ERC 4337 wallets that are being built on Optimism. What this kind of leads to is this influx of usability, for which it makes it easier for people to go on chain in general. So 4337 wallets make it so that you don't need a seed phrase, massive barrier out of the way. Smart contract wallets allow for extra logic to be added within how you interact with blockchains. Another like host of features there. So super excited about what that leads to in terms of just usability and being able to get more people on the network itself. The other vertical, which is obviously like talked about a lot, like in the mainstream now, is like gaming. Everyone's talking about gaming a bit. One thing that I'm seeing emerge at Optimism, which I'm really excited about, is on-chain gaming. So these are not gaming in the sense like Axie Infinity, which has like NFTs on chain that you trade. This is like the entire game is on chain. So we had OP Craft, which was a voxel world that was in a certain capacity. It was its own blockchain, right? So you could technically go and build a AMM within a cave in this blockchain world, right? Like it changes the way in which people can interact with blockchains. Super exciting, built on Bedrock. So there's that's emerging. There's other games like Small Brain Games that are also emerging. That's going to do like chess, a variant of chess on chain with interesting mechanics. They've done Scrabble already, or 3 is what it was called. So we're seeing this emergence of this subculture of like deeply technical on-chain games, and pairing that with the 4337 wallets and like the usability components could essentially make for this world in which like your grandmother could come on and play a game, right? Like it kind of unlocks certain things, which I'm very excited about. But that's honestly just the tip of the iceberg. There are literally like every single segment within this industry, segments that don't even exist within this industry are building on layer 2s, and it's just, you can see like what it unlocks. And I think we're really at a time where more and more builders are like warming up to this idea, and more people are getting like increasingly creative about what they can accomplish on a layer 2. So
yeah, on-chain Farmville, can't wait. That's going to be great. Or Candy Crush. Beavis, I know you know a lot about
Do
it.
we have the technology? Do we have the technology to throw StarCraft on chain?
Not yet. That's layer 3.
That'd be really embarrassing if you could see all my ratings forever immortalized. Look, Beavis, you know quite a bit about account abstraction. Do you have anything to add here onto the benefits and why a user wouldn't want to keep their life savings on a piece of paper?
Yeah, I mean, we've been working on account abstraction for around a year now at Byte Masons, and we're not taking the ERC 433.7 approach. In fact, Benji was the one that clued me in. But really, like the idea of creating a more abstract means for users to interact with blockchain, I think is imperative. And where we focus on is, how can we give the average user, the security at the hardware level or at the wallet level of a ledger. So that's coming in with like your HSM vaults, all of this really, really secure cloud architecture that's kind of been rising to prominence in the past handful of years. And how can you give them the UX that they have on, say, an iPhone? I think the iPhone does a really good balance of managing UX and security. And it's also done a good balance of getting people used to securing the hell out of their accounts. So, when you're talking about here's the wallet level, here's where you're interacting with the blockchain, here's the application that's integrating this wallet's API, and here's the smart contract that the user is interacting with, kind of like you mentioned, Benji, you have these points between point A and point B where you can, let's say, harden security, create safety measures. So some things that we explore are, GPT-3 analysis of transactions to figure out if something could be malicious or not. Talking about tiered authentication, wherein, okay, maybe a user's whipping out their life savings for some reason in a transfer request. Can we request an additional layer of authentication to do that? Or someone is, trying to fire off a transaction. Can we make them type in a PIN if we think it's, could be malicious or could be weird? And then talking about how we batch transactions at the wallet level, how we execute transactions. How can we more intelligently optimize how bytecode gets from your Ethers.js library or whatever to the actual smart contract, and how can we save people money and save people gas? And 4337 is designed to do a lot of that stuff. It's essentially like, okay, now you have this mempool that aggregates user transactions, and now you submit it to a node a little bit differently, and it's executed a little bit differently, and you can solve a lot of UX problems in one go that way. And just route transactions and bundle and batch transactions via smart contracts. So really, I think with account abstraction, every network wants it. Not every network has builders that can execute. And I think that's where we see like Ethereum really kind of punching people in the face. It's like, we are attracting the talent. We are attracting the talent in the cryptography space, in the computer science space, even in like the, entrepreneurial fields. Ethereum is attracting all the people because, of course, they have the biggest addressable market. But I think, again, like the ethos of Ethereum and by extension, the ethos of Optimism and Layer 2 networks, you're going to get mission-driven builders. And we see the same thing in Byte Masons, where it's like, if you're hiring people that want to make a buck, then, you might have a good team for a while. You might have an okay team. You might have a bad team, to be honest, depending on who you are. But if you're hiring people who are focused on a mission and who are long-term thinkers and know that upon the completion of the mission, the goals that they've set in their lives will be complete. And I think a lot of us see that through blockchain, through DeFi, through Ethereum. Then you kind of win the game. And Optimism is attracting those builders. Ethereum has a lot of those builders. And, I would say Byte Masons are 100% mission driven. And that's why, we went to Benji. We're like, dude, we want to be the friends of Optimism. So these people will always like coalesce and align. And, we're definitely stronger together. And all these coordination mechanisms that blockchain and by extension Optimism governance and all that stuff bring just gives us the tools to do it. And I see like a future where it happens. And I guess that's diverging quite a ways from account abstraction, but accessibility is just such a massive part of any coordination effort. And it's probably the biggest, thing between blockchain and mass adoption is, making it more abstract, making it simpler, making it easy enough for your mom to use it without you holding her mouse for her and getting frustrated for 2 hours, but yeah, I guess that's my 2 cents.
Definitely. And I wanted to quickly ask the audience, if you have any questions, quickly put them in the chat below, because I'm scrolling through and I'll be able to read some out. So please go ahead and ask your questions now. Look, you highlighted a major challenge. I think we just highlighted a pretty major challenge in DeFi, and not just Optimism's problem, but how do you get the next billion users engaging with this new financial architecture and more broadly, this new technology? How do we convince everyone that this is the new internet? What other challenges are out there? Maybe I could throw it over to Alex or Benji first. If you guys had any other, what are the major blockages for Optimism that need to be cleared next?
I mean, I think we've already touched upon it, but there's I think people have to feel safe interacting with these systems. I think that is most critical. I think we're on the adoption curve, right, where there are the sort of willing first adopters, the risk takers, the folks willing to forge out on the frontier. We are all here, but we are willing to tolerate a lot. I mean, everything about this space, is sort of is taxing. It's difficult. It's complex, and that's even when everything's working as it's supposed to. And so, I think making sure people feel safe, making sure that we are building experiences that onboard people, because even just a few more notches over, on the adoption curve, I think you've got people who are willing to embrace complexity, who are willing to engage in some of these systems, but they just need to be eased into it, right? Onboarded to it. I mean, all of us personally went through this at some point where we had no idea what we were doing when we were interacting with some of these systems. Before you know it, we're the type of folks locking tokens for 4 years in NFTs and voting for bribes deposited in this other thing, right? And so it's possible if we can onboard people to it. And so I think one of our big focuses, so obviously we can only help so much with making people feel secure, but we think of ourselves basically as a public utility, right, for the Optimism ecosystem. We believe in sort of the crypto thesis that part of the beauty of the space is that anybody can sort of get involved in, right? Things like public utilities, they can basically, be a voter, right? Get bribes for that, participate in the system, and then benefit in some way by virtue of their participation. And we'll launch the V2 of our protocol next month, and we've completely rebuilt the front end with that sort of onboarding experience in mind. And that's everything from when you are just swapping tokens. Let's kind of step you through that. Let's make that very clear. That's usually where people will start. And then if you're going to get into anything more complex like LPing, again, let's sort of walk you through that. Let's if you're going to lock tokens, let's make very clear what that is. And I think the more that we can do that sort of onboarding, the more we'll capture the next sort of big segment of users. And then we can just sort of keep marching up the adoption curve to the place where, it really is, seamless and easy for folks who don't care about any of the complexity to engage and benefit from all the activity that's going on here.
I'm going to get a little spicy. And this is in general usability for crypto and as a whole industry, right? I'd say right now it's really difficult to get on chain. I think we can all agree that our parents or grandparents aren't going to have the easiest time to get on chain. I think one of the things is I'm really liking this new era where people are focusing on usability and trying to look at abstraction in general. And Optimism is very, very, very forward about that. So if you look at our website, if you look at things like the Optimus NFT, where everyone on Optimism gets an identity they can use to represent themselves, and that over time gets baked in with reputation. If you look at the way we're doing retroactive RPGF, the concept of that is funding public goods in its core, which makes it a very inclusive mission that even people who are outside of the technical element of crypto or outside the financial elements of crypto can actually feel empowered to want to get involved in this larger mission. So the spicy thing on my side is for the history of like the past couple of years, it's been this rite of passage thing. It's like, oh, I had to go and do this seed phrase thing and go on this janky website and get rugged 200 times to get to where I am today. And you do too if you want to bomb. Like that's kind of like an unspoken rule of sorts that goes on. That's not how we reach mass adoption, right? Like we can have rugs, like if we want like billions of people on chain. So essentially, I think within that realm, like it's important to think about those elements, like those things, those abstractions. Essentially, how can you make it one, like safe, as Alex said, two, usable, and three, fun. Like people need to want to be on here. Like it shouldn't necessarily just be driven by one factor, but like a multitude of factors that coalesce into something that's like, okay, I actually like using Optimism. I like using this app. I like being involved in the ecosystem. I like voting. So yeah, I think that in general kind of ties into this like user experience where it's not just how the website looks, but it's how the website and like how the mission feels. So yeah.
We gotta remove the I was rugged requirement, the barrier of entry, right?
Yeah. Also, we need to do like daily transactions in the daily life with blockchain to reach mass adoption. In my eyes, like if we cannot do our daily transactions on blockchain, or like if we can't take loans like we are getting from the banks, or like any financial use case that TradFi offers, if we can't do that, I think DeFi will be something like patting each other in the back. To reach mass adoption, like I need to be able to buy my Starbucks coffee or like anything else, like McDonald's burger with my wallet address where the merchant accepts crypto and I accept pay with crypto. And when that happens, when I can put my house as collateral on like Zone Finance, I don't know, maybe others will do it, like, or like something like that. When I start to trade stocks on Velodrome, then I think the mass adoption becomes easier for all. But till that, we have very, very big future ahead of us. But like, I'm pretty optimistic about it, to be honest. Yeah.
Dude, that's minus 10 points. You can't.
It's definitely. Go ahead, Beavis.
I think like, what we're seeing on Optimism now, and kind of speaking to Fallout Zone's question of what we're missing, is we're seeing a lot of teams, and this is the story on every blockchain. This is the story of the industry as a whole, building these monuments, building these monoliths, or, building the skeleton of what we see a blockchain ecosystem should be. Because, I mean, the accessibility isn't there yet. The total addressable market is relatively small. You compare it to all the industries we're trying to disrupt, and we're kind of like a goldfish in a lake. But we're building out these bones, and over time, and like retroactive public goods funding is imperative to this. Over time, we're going to see like ligature and muscles start to build up, and we're going to see like on these bones, all of this, like these barnacles, like, or whatever you want to call them, start to latch on and start to build on them until, finally, okay, here's this complete entity. You can take care of all of your, needs within whatever market vertical you're using on the blockchain. It has its lane, it has its domain, it knows what it's solving, it knows its mission, and it's driving there. And, what we're seeing kind of on a grand scale is, while this is happening, you also have the rest of the world. So Optimism, here is building this world on top of their network, trying to flesh out what is essentially a virtual country, a virtual economy, trying to flesh it out, trying to build like positivity and momentum. And then there's the world, okay, now we have this totally beautifully fleshed out ecosystem. And then you zoom out, and now it's like, okay, now this is just another bone in the skeleton of the world. And we've got so much more building out of ligature and muscles, trying to connect this to everything else. And, when I know the meme is like, oh, we're so early, but I mean, really, like I gave a talk at a big bank, and one of the things I said is like, you don't have to care about blockchain yet, like it's just simply not ready. It's not ready for your users. It's not ready even for your engineers. You need to be willing to become an Ethereum engineer to smash your head into a wall for, a few months straight to make the switch. And, it's fun and probably worthwhile to do for a lot of people. But, when you're a 40-year-old IT guy who's been, building on the same system for 20 years, working at JP Morgan, waiting on your, retirement benefits or whatever, you're not going to learn, Solidity. There's like so much IT infrastructure in place in the real world that it is literally impossible to do like a bait and switch. Like we're going to see kind of a gradual growth of these connections between, this little blockchain economy and the rest of the economy. And, I mean, there's a world where we just slap it on top and we're like, it's better. Good luck competing. And, I don't think that's going to happen necessarily, no matter what maximalists might say. But, it's like, I see this as a great milestone. Like this technology, and especially once we get to a point where it's fleshed out, is just like another huge milestone in human evolution. And with all those milestones, you see all these bridges from the previous milestones. You have, Web 2, you have Web 1, basic electronic communication. You have like, pigeons somewhere. You have like smoke signals. You need to bridge that gap, and that's a gap that's like right now bridged by a tightrope, and all hail to the teams that have been treading on it lately. But we just have so long to go, and Optimism, I think, shares that weakness with everything else. And I think keeping that at front of mind, especially when you're a builder, or especially when you're like trying to assist builders or contribute, you need to remember like this is going to be a decades-long process, and it's just about like maintaining the vision and not thinking like worrying about the volatility, because that's what really sucks about this space. It's like you're trying to build a business, you're trying to relax, you're trying to cut everybody paychecks, and you're trying to have a life. And meanwhile, traders are all screaming and yelling and throwing money around. But just remember, like in the long run, it's who are those guys? Probably people generating fees for us, so we can continue funding public goods. But
thank you for your service, traders.
It's just like a continuous grind, and I think we'll see this grind mirrored, maybe in slightly different ways, but all across the industry. And Optimism, I see as a leader. So we'll keep on pushing.
For what it's worth, I mean, I've seen a tremendous amount of positive news about how much easier it is to send remittance, to family members across. If you're someone that's been the one person from the village that got sent to America to earn, a bit of money and send it home, crypto and blockchain actually makes more of that money yours in a way that was previously impossible to secure. So it is such a tremendous opportunity. And I'm sure there's maybe some people in the audience or people watching back over this video that are wondering, or they're hearing this and saying, oh my God, like this is a whole new frontier. I want to be involved. I want to be a builder on Optimism. I'm surrounded right now with you four fantastic builders in your own respect, in different aspects. Can we help come up with some advice to give to people wanting to break into Optimism as a builder, or how to get connected? And maybe I could start with you, Benji. Where would you start?
So I would go straight to the docs first, like depending on what sort of builder. If you have an idea, go to the docs. Essentially, we're very much like we are EVM equivalent, which means if you don't know how to do something and you Google how to do XYZ on Ethereum, it's the same in Optimism, right? So like there's a lot of like simplifications there where it's easy for you to kind of pick it up if you already built apps on Ethereum before. So that's one. Definitely go to our docs. It's if you go to our app.optimism.io, you will see all the docs essentially. We have a bunch of videos as well and guides to kind of like take you through the process, and like we have a help center as well that's dedicated towards taking some questions. I will also add a link to this chat. Samson, if you can share it, which is our Get Started intake form. And this is like essentially if you want to connect with me and some others from OP Labs to just like, have an initial chat and understand what it is you want to build. We can start essentially get in touch that way. Then we also have a Discord, which I'll also send a link to. Would love for people to join that Discord, network with each other, make friends, vibe, have fun, share memes, live, laugh, love, all that stuff. But yeah, I'll send some resources. I think in terms of what to build, we actually have idea lists that are forming. So there's a big effort across all of people within OP Labs, outside on the foundation, in the governance delegates. Someone who's a contributor to Velodrome, Jack, has an incredible tweet thread. We're going to be compiling all these ideas. So even if you don't have an idea, but you're interested, keep a lookout. Follow us on Twitter. And I'm sure a lot of we'll have a lot of things to get your gears turning. But I'll share the links in the meantime on the chat.
Thanks, Benji. Before anyone else answers, I want to add on to the rest of you. How has working with Optimism been different compared to other experiences? And honestly, how has it been better as well? Benji, if you want to find those links, I'll share them in the YouTube as well. And if anyone's watching on the VOD, we'll include them in the description too, so you can check them out. Go ahead. Let's go. Atakan, can I call on you first? What's building on Optimism like, and where would you start?
So it was a little bit scary at first, because when you see that Discord for the first time or the governance for the first time, you get a little scared and overwhelmed. But after you get along with it, it was pretty easy experience, I would say. We started with demo day. Velodrome guys helped us in the beginning. We did our liquidity generation event, and it was pretty easy. Community is really helpful. After some time, we didn't even have to answer any questions asked in the Discord. Generally, someone from our community just answers it, and I think we share much more how can I say, much more member with Velodrome, because many active members in our Discord are active in Velodrome as well. So yeah, I think it was pretty easy. Yeah.
Nice.
Thanks. Yeah, it seemed pretty easy from where I was standing. Go ahead, Alex. I'll pass it over to you now.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different ways you could look at this question. I mean, depending on where you're starting from. I mean, at one level, it's just find a way to get involved, right? I very much got sort of gravitationally pulled into the space just out of curiosity. But what got me actually into it was writing Twitter threads and, showing up in Discords and just lending a hand. Excuse me, getting a little tickle in my throat. So I think to one degree, if you're interested in DeFi, if you're interested in the Optimism ecosystem, just show up in the Velodrome Discord, show up in the Sun Discord, show up in the Optimism Discord, get engaged with the community, talk with people. There are so many gaps always in documentation and communication and community help and explaining things, right? That there's always some place that you can show up and add value. And so I would say that that's one piece of it. The other piece is just that we came from the sort of Phantom ecosystem, and at least in the moment that we were there in Phantom, it was a kind of a bitter, angry PvP kind of place, right? It was wild, and I know from so many people who've been there for a long time, they'll tell you it did not always feel that way. That was not the vibe in the early days. It certainly wasn't even the reputation it had. It had the reputation of being this great playground for amazing builders. But I think one thing that was so surprising to us in coming to Optimism is just how sort of friendly, supportive, and yes, I'm sorry, I'm going to lose some points, but optimistic, people are, and that extends. I know that extends not only from the foundation, but also the different projects. I think as like Velodrome, we have this like benefit of basically kind of serving as the front door of the ecosystem. That almost any project looking to get started on Optimism, they're probably some combination of connecting with Benji and connecting with Velodrome. And when we are looking to like get people going here, it isn't just like, okay, let's get your token whitelisted, let's show you how to set up incentives. It's about, okay, here's how you can really get integrated on Velodrome. Who else are you looking to connect with in the ecosystem? Let's connect you to them. Oh, you want to apply for a grant through governance? Well, you got to talk to Jack, a member of our team, Optimism delegate, and we're going to take your proposal and we'll give you feedback after having gone through that grueling experience and tell you everything that you need to do, to dial it in to put that best foot forward. And I think that sort of like sense of like Optimism only works if there is a ton of different projects providing a ton of different utility. All the activity is flowing between them. That's where all the retroactive public good funding comes from, right? It's from that activity. And so it really does feel like a space where we're all looking to rise the tide, have all ships lift together, support each other, take care of each other. And so I think that I do not think every chain necessarily feels like that. I don't think every community necessarily feels like that. And I think that's the thing, if you're looking to get involved in the Optimism ecosystem in any capacity, that you have to look forward to.
Such a good point. And I love that, you kind of touched on, but I don't know if it was explicit enough. So I want to really reinforce that you don't have to be a coder to get involved either. Getting involved in the project could just be having ideas. It's really just that simple. It's just coming in and giving feedback, because, sometimes builders can get stuck in a bit of an echo chamber as well. So we need fresh opinions and fresh perspectives to break through and make sure that we're actually surfacing the best ideas in the community. This is a decentralized effort for real. And so with that, I'll pass it over to you, Beavis. Anything else to add on building on Optimism and getting started?
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before in so many words, but you probably just want to annoy the Velodrome team as quickly as possible. I remember, like, probably to me, like the biggest, like, the most I've ever thought about Optimism governance. And, I mean, we had our proposal, which didn't succeed. And then we're like, okay, we'll show you. And then, became a top 10 project without tokens. But like an order of magnitude greater than that was Velodrome's like incentive renewal proposal. I remember like they were getting browbeaten left and right. Like everybody was like skewing data this way, that way, the other. And I forgot who it was. Some lady that I've interacted with before on governance, but I was just like, dude, like why are you caring that much about the data? Literally, if you're a builder, Velodrome is like the only way to get connected. And they're doing all of the most annoying, most like time intensive things like, customer service, developer services, developer relations, like, being the voice of Optimism. And it's like, they could be, doing crap business wise, but they're doing all this stuff and they're onboarding all these teams that it's like, the most obvious thing in the world. And, and it always is funny when people compare Velodrome to UniV3. That's my favorite, like, Velodrome FUD, where it's like, dude, UniV3, like, you're not trading, Shiba Conk or whatever on it, of course they have more volume. It's concentrated liquidity for premium assets. Whereas Velodrome is like, this is your API to literally every single community on Velodrome. And I think that's what we're seeing is absolutely vital. And that's where Solidly really killed it, is as a service for startups and for builders who maybe can't manage liquidity on UniV3, maybe don't have deep enough liquidity to go on UniV3, maybe can't, compete in those sorts of markets. It's like suddenly if you have $100 a week to spare, you've bootstrapped a liquidity pool, and now you can start building an ecosystem and onboarding users. And it's just like, I see it as pretty much like Optimism, Velodrome, right underneath, and then all these teams like plugging in and communicating to people through this like layer of commerce. So if you're a builder, find your way into the Velodrome Discord, and then at everyone. No, I'm just kidding. But I think Alex and co have done a really, really phenomenal job of giving people a warm welcome. And I think, honestly, like, without the positivity they showed, like when our Optimism governance proposal failed, like, who knows if we would have stayed, because it was like, you have this uphill battle, and it's like, darn. And it's like, wait, it seems like, everybody's here to build us back up to the precipice, to the agora, what have you. And, now like we're fully bought in. So it's, big ups to Velodrome. And I know, like, they probably get more guff than anyone. It's like being on top on a network, or being a big dog. Everybody wants to tear you down a bit, but like the work they're doing is work that I don't envy. and I think the support they've given to the OP crew and to builders is like, mwah. It's what you really hope for out of a team. So kudos to you. I hope many more people keep annoying you in your Discord, and your success grows as a result. So,
I hope so. And I mean, that just goes to a point, I think, generally about the space, is that I think there can be a way of thinking about it, right, where we can't wait until all of the human layer is abstracted away, right, and it's this perfect game of immutable incentives that everybody can just seamlessly tap into, and it all just works. And there may be some aspects of crypto and DeFi that do eventually work to a degree in that way. But for the time being, and I think, of course, to some degree in perpetuity, that the human layer is so important. These are complex systems, but they only work if humans engage with them in meaningful ways. And Andre, in posting his own thoughts about the sort of failure solidly, listed a few things, but that was one of the aspects that he noted, was the sort of lack of a human layer. And I think Optimism brings an amazing human layer to the chain. I think we definitely try to bring a human layer to that sort of front door and base liquidity layer. That isn't the business that Uniswap is in. That is not the business that Curve is in. And that is just fine. We can do that work. And I also think we can bring all the sort of big technical innovations that they can and will be soon. So I think, aligning a lot of that is where a lot of power will come. But, it's great. And I think if you sort of conduct yourself in that way, and you do your best to help people, they pay it right back. And San is a great example of that, of how closely they've integrated with us and plenty of other projects and Synthetics and others. And, we are now all benefiting by virtue of having supported one another and built something exciting and powerful and easy to onboard and all that sort of fun stuff.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, without too much back padding, I'll go ahead, Benji.
Yeah. Hey, I just wanted to add something. The general thread is like, I feel like a network succeeds when you don't just feel like you're building on a network. So, a builder that comes in Optimism, I would say, because of the work that Velodrome and because of the work that our community has done, people don't feel like they're just building on Optimism. They feel like they're building Optimism. And you see that by having things like decentralized governance, where Jack from Velodrome is a part of the builder subcommittee, right? Like, we have members from project essentially also involved within governance and essentially like helping spearhead that. So when you do build on Optimism, you're not just building on it, you are building it itself. And you can actually influence the direction it goes, and you can influence how things happen and actually like have your voice heard and feel ownership. over your work and the way in which you shape your work, and inevitably shape the network. And I think that's a superpower that we're seeing more and more, especially as governance matures and especially as the network matures. I think that's what makes me so excited to be able to work on a network where people who build on it actually feel like they have ownership.
Yeah, no, and actually to that point, I think right before we went in and had our sort of second big governance proposal, we did meet as a team, and we had a lot of voices outside again, sort of saying, "Hey, you guys are having a moment, go have that moment too on Arbitrum, like try to do the things that so many people do, right? Like capture that excitement, launch on as many chains as possible, all that sort of stuff." And we went round and round on it, and we talked about it. But one of the things that we aligned on is exactly what you're describing, Benji, and that rather than, oh, well, is optimism going to work? And wouldn't it be safer for us to branch out and diversify and capture on broader excitement? And said, well, we can make optimism work, right? Like, it's not like we're just a passenger, on this ship, and, we're going to be completely helpless in optimism's success or failure. We sort of said, well, hell, no, we can actually help build them. Right? We can help attract these projects. We can help build the excitement. We can, and in creating that, make optimism successful. And by virtue of having all of our incentives aligned to make optimism successful, right, also make ourselves successful. So I really, really, it's amazing you put it that way, because that is like pretty much the exact conversation we had. And, that's why we've got like a team member like Jack, who probably spends just as much of his time deep in the weeds of optimism governance as he does, in the day-to-day of Velodrome sometimes. And we think that is the best way to use him, right? Because what happens to optimism influences what happens to us. I don't want him thinking about RV. Like, I want him thinking about how to make optimism great and Velodrome great, and make all those connections.
Nice. I really liked we are building optimism. I'll give you plus 30 points for that one, Benji. It sort of didn't have the same cheesiness.
Just add that not just like developers or governance, but anyone can do it. Like anyone can build the optimism. Like in back Phantom days, I was like doing those educational videos. Like, I don't know how to code, but I know some financial things, and I knew the like DeFi protocols, how they work, but people didn't know it. So I tried to educate them, and anyone can do it. Like anyone can write threads, explaining protocols, explaining things, how OP works, how optimism works, how governance works, etc. Educate more people, so that way they can also help building optimism as well. Like, you don't have to be a developer to build optimism. Like, you just have to work for it and make your voice heard.
Nice.
And you qualify for retroactive funding for doing all that too.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well,
the people
guys,
who are doing the work will be rewarded. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I guess I'll just do a quick wrap up. Unless there's any other thoughts, feel free to chip in or chime in as I go. But I suppose through this conversation, what I've been hearing is that, if you're a user that's wanting to get access to the most secure network to move money but without permission, then you probably should be considering Optimism. It's a fantastic way to get involved in a community that's larger than the blockchain, to be part of something that's trying to be good and do good in the world. And you also get to meet a lot of amazing builders, explorers, and other users that are collaborating, like through Alex and Atakan and Beavis, and through Benji as well, to create real opportunities for us all to be opportunistic about. Sorry, minus 10 again for that. So get excited, get involved. The big red is happening now. All the hippies are dancing. We're throwing the balls around. It's getting pretty lit. So I really recommend that if you haven't yet, take a dive and try Optimism, and try the protocols that we covered today: Sone Finance, Velodrome. You can also try Reaper Farm. if you just want easy auto compounding. Now, maybe I could just pass it around to everyone to have a quick closing statement and maybe tell everyone where they can follow and how they can get involved in each of your projects. Benji, I'll let you go first just because I hope yours was the simplest as well. Oh, you're muted, Benji.
You're muted.
Sorry.
You're muted.
Yeah, so I there's a few ways to contact me directly. Like, feel free to contact me on Twitter. My DMs are open. It's Benji_X. Also, I have a Telegram chat that I had sent Samson. If you could send that on the YouTube channel, if you want to join that, happy to kind of like answer any of your questions async as well, and help you get started on Optimism. And also, like, just want to say, it does not matter what you are like good at, right? Like, so like Samson said, you don't have to be a programmer. You can do anything, and if you want to get involved, if you want to contribute, there's going to be a home for you on Optimism. So yeah, the Telegram link would probably be the best, but also my DMs are open.
Awesome. Thanks, Benji. Atakan, I'll throw it over to you next. Where can people find you?
You can follow me on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter as Intro to DeFi, or like DeFi Intro at DeFi Intro. Or you can find me in Zone Discord. Like, I am always there. You can ask anything there, and I guarantee that you will get your answer.
Nice. All right, Beavis, over to you now.
You can follow our team at discord.gg/ReaperFarm. You can pretty much find anything there. You can follow me personally at OXBeavis_, I think, on Twitter. Otherwise, yeah, I'll probably be around in future episodes. So, you can figure it out in the future.
Nice. All right, and Alex, lastly, thanks.
Yeah, you can follow me. I'm at WagMeAlexander on Twitter. And if you want to know more about Velodrome, that's at Velodrome on Twitter as well. And that has all the links for our Discord website, all of that fun stuff. But yeah, definitely feel free to ping me, drop into our Discord, get involved. But otherwise, thank you so much, guys, for having us on. This has been a great conversation.
No, thank you. It's been a really enlightening 90 minutes for me. I definitely learned a lot more about Optimism too. You can follow me at BitSamson on Twitter. Otherwise, same Discord as Beavis. We usually move in a pair. So thanks again for your time, everyone. It really, really appreciate it. I hope that our users and listeners are kind of getting an understanding of why we're so excited about the Big Red. And Optimism is here to stay. And we're excited to, connect everyone and start sharing these ideas and learning more together. So really appreciate your time again. And I guess we'll sayonara. So until next time, we'll be streaming again in a couple of weeks. So look out for that. We're going to find our next cast members. If there's any delegates watching, feel free to hit us up too. And we'll get more into detail on how proposals and governance works next time. I'm really excited for that. So thanks again, guys. And I'll see you next time.
See you, everybody. Thank you.